Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about something I've been doing lately. It's stuff I've talked about way in the past before that I thought I would experiment with. And I'm obviously not the only person out there who's done this, and that's why I was willing to undertake it. And so when people think it sounds crazy, there are people who take it further than I do, who are out there who do discuss it, who are legitimate athletes. So and that's this whole idea of doing large amounts of chin-ups every single day. Now, at first, it sounds ridiculous, and people will say, well, aren't you going to have tendon issues? Haven't you had issues from weighted chin-ups in the past? Yes. And it has to do with hanging from the bottom or focusing on getting up over the bar too far into an unnatural position with large amounts of weight, or doing sets to failure with weight. And that's usually what happens with a lot of overuse injuries, is when we start taking moderately heavy weight to failure, or we force ourselves into unnatural positions. And that's been my personal experience with the chin-up. Usually when you start getting tendinitis is when you do stuff like when you know that you have basically done a chin-up, and if you don't feel that your chin is high enough, and then you stretch to push your chin up over the bar, right? Because you're trying to get that last bit of range of motion, and then all of a sudden you do it too much with heavy weight, and then tendons and things start hurting. Yeah, because that wasn't your normal range of motion. It's because people have a standard on this lift from whatever reason where they think they're supposed to do it a certain way. Well, if you're not in whatever form of local chin-up contest they're doing, it really isn't relevant, because you're doing it just as a very high volume strength and conditioning and work capacity exercise. It's not that important that you do that. And in fact, if that's not a natural position for you, you don't want to extend to those extreme ranges of motion. Right? It should just be one smooth, fluid motion. Number two, when you start doing large amounts of them, you start finding the angles involved to take that stress off the tendons. Now, for me, I find that if I do them almost with, similar to how you tuck on a bench press and the actual elbows rotate, in my case, I've noticed that I don't have these issues so much because I've learned it's just easier on my connective tissue and easier on all my joints involved if I allow my elbows to flare at the bottom. So when I come all the way down, if I turn my elbows out, just like you do on the lockout on a bench press, right? You guys know how to bench. You start with a tuck and then a pop. You pop those elbows out as you're going up on the bench, right? You start with a tuck and you pop them out. Well, if when you get to the bottom, you allow your elbows to go ahead and flare and turn out to the side a little bit. I mean, because you're on a chin, so they're not going to be the same way, but you let them come out. And then it is when you get to the bottom, just as you're starting to go up, you turn them back in and you tuck your elbows forward. It seems to help tremendously. And if you can't stretch the last inch of the lockout on the elbows, it's not a big deal because you're doing these for volumes. Like in my case, this week, I'm recording this on a Friday morning. I haven't done any chin-ups yet. I'm already past 400 for the week. So this is going to be a week to where I very well might go over 600. My goal is to get to 500 every week. Eventually it's going to turn into 100 a day. So I'm not having the tendon issues. And people would say, well, why do this? What's the point? Well, let's talk about just general work capacity and being in shape. You know, we talk about metabolic conditioning. We talk about general physical preparedness. How many people out there who have various manual labor jobs who pick up strength sports become extremely good at them? A lot. Well, by many people's standards, including especially like bodybuilders, what a lot of people who have physically demanding jobs do would be overtraining, right? Farmer or rancher, construction workers, those guys are all overtraining, right? Why aren't they? Why aren't they getting frail and weak while doing it? You know, why aren't they completely frail and weak 6 months into doing that job? I mean, if you're out there working on a farm or a ranch every day, like real ranch work, not just a part-time thing, they should be overtrained completely and have lost all their muscle and strength 6 months after they start. Well, it's not the case. So it's about doing demanding work every day. And when you think about what's involved, how many guys out there, when you look at their various weak points, spend all this time worried about their biceps? How many guys out there worry about things like their grip? How many guys out there worry about things like their core or their back? For power lifters, for example, all right? My people there. How many of you struggle with sometimes your back being a weak link and knowing you need to do all this supplemental back work? If you did large numbers of chin-ups every single day, would you really need to do supplemental back work? No. Absolutely not. And then you think about the ranges of motion involved. You worry about shoulder mobility. Well, dropping to a dead hang over and over and over and over every day and keeping that shoulder mobility, you don't think that's going to help you? You think you'll have to keep doing a bunch of rows? When you're doing 500 plus chin-ups, if you're at a pretty heavy body weight every single day, do you really think you need to do supplemental back work anymore? Do your rear delts and your lats need work? No. All right? You sort all of that. You're going to get a big, thick back. And you guys can say what you want, but I don't think anybody can deny that I have a big, thick back. Right? Anybody want to deny that? You're looking at it. You're delusional if you don't think that I do. So, over to the point. It will do that. What else we have going on here? We have all this work capacity. But then you think about things like biceps. All these guys obsess over growing their biceps. And I'm sure mine will probably be growing from doing this over time. But when the whole chin-up versus curl debate comes up, what is it that all the best coaches always bring up? Like, well, yeah, we know based upon the research, we know based upon EMG data, we know based on biomechanics that technically curls do not work the biceps harder than a chin-up does. In fact, most types of curls don't. They don't work them as hard as the chin-ups. But it's a good idea to do curls if you want bigger biceps anyways. And the logic behind that, and it's sound logic, it's actually good logic, it makes sense. Okay, so I'm not knocking it in any way, is what? You can only do so much work with your back, right? There's going to reach a threshold to where oftentimes your biceps have a higher recoverable volume than your back. And if the biceps are lagging, they will give you, you need the extra bicep work because your back just can't handle anymore. Well, what happens when you build your work capacity doing chins every single day to where your back does have a massive work capacity? Maybe this becomes less of an issue. Furthermore, I can tell you that at a certain point every day, and it's for me, when we start talking about where you feel stuff starting to burn, even though I'm a very back dominant person, my back takes over for everything. And it should be obvious. My back is bigger than my biceps relative, right? That should be obvious to anybody looking to. But as I've been doing this experiment, the last month or so, and continuing to do it with no problems, one of the things I notice is that as I get further into the day, I start feeling it in my biceps more. Okay? And I think that's an important point, too, for guys worried about a lot of bicep development. I feel it in my biceps the further I get into the day. Early on, I know my back is doing all the work. Maybe the first 40 or 50 chin-ups every day, it's back. Where do you think I start feeling it by around the 70, like number 70, number 80? Well, I start getting sets past that throughout the day. I start to feel nothing but bicep. It's like every rep, my back doesn't even seem to matter anymore, but my biceps. Even by the third rep of any set, because even if I do it with a bunch of sets of 6, right? I generally do 6s and 8s, occasionally a 10 or an 11, right? I do mostly sets of 6 and 8 all day, dozens of them. Well, over a dozen, obviously. Usually by about the third rep, I feel nothing but my biceps as we get into the later sets through the day. The biceps are now having to take over. They're getting a tremendous amount of work, and it may not be that they're taking over, but they accumulate a lot of fatigue. They accumulate a lot of fatigue to where you start feeling them, and you start getting that pump in the lower forearm, but it's not a cramp, it's a nice pump. So the biceps get more and more work. And if you think about it from a workload perspective, when you're doing this whole argument for needing curls starts to go away. And I'm not saying people shouldn't do some curls. I still grab a band every now and then and crank out a 20 rep set of curls, okay, on occasion, because I know I need more arm in general. But I have a feeling doing this over time, we're going to see, when I get to where I'm doing 100 plus every day, and I've been doing it, for a couple of months, I think we'll see some arm growth, right? And we should, because chin-ups work your biceps very well. Volume builds muscle. And those are two things that I don't think many people deny. So probably see that. So biceps guys. Then what about all the other stuff that it works? We know that chin-ups work your abs as much as a crunch does. You're basically doing, at this point, 100 crunches every day. Right? This is extra ab work. Extra ab work for all you lifters who need a stronger core. At a certain point, rear delts, people can say, well, the chin-up's not the best rear delt exercise. No, it's not. But when you're doing 500, 600, 700 of them a week, your delts are getting worse. How about your grip? Think about it in terms of grip stamina. Grip responds very, very well to very high volumes of training, right? Because of the muscles involved in your forearms and hands. They're built for that. To start doing for your grip, right? It's extra grip training. A lot of the problems that people have and things that are weak links that they need to work on, what, upper chest, long head of the triceps, abs, biceps, grip, general work capacity. This is actually a very multifaceted fix for those things. And it's easier to do than you think it is. Especially if you have a chin-up bar at work or something you can do at work. Have a chin-up bar at home that you get up in the morning and knock out a couple sets before work. Knock out more of them before you go to bed when you get home. In my case, I do them even as part of my Metcon because I'm just used to doing chin-ups all the time now. All right, it adds up. It adds up a lot, and it lets you not have to spend other time worried about these weak points. You can just go about your normal training. In fact, this would be the one thing I might add is just a general weak point training tool just for people to put into their repertoire because it fixes so many things. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.